Tom Page began his career with the Detroit Police Department before joining the Los Angeles Police Department, where he became the officer in charge of its drug recognition expert unit. He helped create standards and curriculum used by officers in all 50 states, Canada, and in other countries to detect and apprehend alcohol and drug-impaired drivers. For this work, Tom has been recognized as an expert by courts in 21 states, and he has presented in several countries and written numerous books on these issues. He continues to serve as a consultant and expert witness. After retiring from LAPD, Mr. Page returned to his hometown of Detroit and has been deeply committed to this city and to this university. He knows everything and everyone between New Center and the river. I know this for a fact, and I know it personally, because he's been very generous in educating me in my 5 years in Detroit about my newly adopted neighborhood in the Cass Corridor, sharing the history of the Wurlitzer building, and introducing me to the owner of a coffee shop on Woodward and everything in between. He is on campus regularly, and I think he must practice with the cheerleading squad because he's certainly one of this university's biggest cheerleaders. He was instrumental in getting the bookstore to create a Detroit Mercy biking jersey, which he often wears, and I think there was a picture of him in his biking jersey. He's worked with Detroit Bikes to build and sell a Detroit Mercy bicycle, which are for sale, and you can talk to him about that. And he has made it possible for some of those bikes to be on loan to students. At the library, students can check out books. At the fitness center, they can check out bicycles, thanks to Tom. He's created and manages numerous social media platforms on law enforcement, urban bicycling, and the resurgence of the city of Detroit. In fact, you should check out 48201 on Facebook, for example, or friend Thomas E. Page, and you'll learn all kinds of things about this city. Not a lot about Tom, but a lot about this city. He develops and leads bicycle tours all over the city. He's the recipient of the Sierra Club's Green Cruiser of the Year Award, the City of Detroit's Distinguished Achievement Award, and the Detroit City Council's Spirit of Detroit Award. Please join me in congratulating Tom Page and welcoming him to the stage.
Thank you very much, Mark, and of course, thank you very much, Dr. Garibaldi. One of the things that Mark didn't mention is one of the accomplishments in my career that I'm most proud of, that a few years ago I worked as a urine collector, actually for the National Football League, and for at least 1 year I was able to get the Detroit Lions off of performance-enhancing drugs, and that happened to be the year they went 0-16. Now, coincidentally, the agency I was working for was terminated after that year. So I want to mention a few things about my late parents that I obviously wish that they could be here today. But my mother was from the hills and the hollers, as we would say, of East Central Tennessee. And she came up to Detroit during World War II and worked as a Rosie the Riveter at the Excello factory, which I actually drove by tonight right over here in Hamilton and Highland Park. She wed my father, who was a returning United States Navy veteran, part of that greatest generation. And interestingly, that neither of them had a lot of basic education, but my mother wound up graduated from high school at the age of 62. My father graduated from high school at the age of 23 as part of a returning veterans program. So even though that they didn't have a lot of the formal education, they were committed to having their three children get that education. And so we went to Catholic schools. Immaculate Heart of Mary, which was not Immaculate Heart of Mary nuns, but Mercy nuns. So I had 8 years of Mercy nuns. And that was followed by 4 years of Jesuits at the University of Detroit High School. So it was pretty natural that I would wind up here, and probably pretty natural I would get into law enforcement also. While I was at this university, I had many great professors, but one really stood out, and I can't really see with the lights, but he is here today, and that was Professor Mike Whitty, who was my undergraduate professor. And it was Dr. Whitty who really, as I would say, connected the dots for me. As part of his business classes, we went to a blues club. We went to a place called the Rappa Coffee House, and Mike really connected the music of the blues with the northern migration, with civil rights, with law, with labor movement, all of those different things. And it was as if that you couldn't understand the blues unless you understood the people and the environment from which that came from. And that was Mike Whitty. And we reconnected many years ago, and I'm sure that I didn't see it, but he's wearing a protest button somewhere. He's trying to stop something. Definitely. So I continued on in graduate school at this university while I was working full-time, and for reasons that aren't really clear to me, I joined the Detroit Police Department, and after a little over 3 years, I was laid off, and as the city at that time, the Chrysler was the biggest taxpayer, and it looked like they were going under, so many of us wound up going out to Los Angeles. I joined the LAPD, and I had a lot of great times. Worked the 1984 Olympics, and I actually, which is I think appropriate, led the Pope in 1987 on the motorcade through the streets of Los Angeles. But certainly there were some very terrible times. Rodney King, the 1992 riots. In fact, the picture that you might have seen at the helmets, that was April 29th, 1992, as me and my staff were headed out for the riots. OJ was another interesting event going on in Los Angeles. And looking back at an average of 2 officers, many that I knew personally that were killed during that period of time, and then there were many more that committed suicide too. So some good times and some bad times. I was recruited, though, by the department, partly because of my education, to help to develop what's now known as the Drug Recognition Expert Program, and certainly it was my education and my liberal arts education here that prepared me for that. While I was here, I was also a member of Phi Sigma Kappa fraternity. And I know that sometimes fraternities get some bad press, deserved many times these days. But the people, the contacts, the things that I learned from that fraternity have stuck with me to this day. And it was this fraternity that instilled in me the 3 principles of brotherhood, scholarship, and character. And in fact, if you go down to the downtown Detroit riverfront, right at Rivard Plaza, there's a very large brick right there that says, you only could do so many letters, so it says U of Detroit, Phi Sigma Kappa, brotherhood, scholarship, and character. But that was one of our ways to continue to give back to the city. In fact, 2 of my fraternity brothers, both attorneys, interestingly enough, Roger Lisinski and Maroon Hakim are seated at my table here. I've also been fortunate to volunteer through Peggy Pattison through the school's 30-minute mentoring program. And in this, you sit down with students and talk to them about their college experience for about 30 minutes. And uniformly, they tell me how much they appreciate this place. They tell me how much the staff and the instructors encourage them and challenge them to build, as one student said, to build that boundless future. And it really struck me that it is really the people that makes this place so very, very special. So a number of people I want to give thanks to. I've said it personally, and hopefully I won't miss it. Jen Defoe, I don't know if she's here. She was the first person that reached out to me and said, you need to get involved as an alumnus here. Terry Stokes-Carroll, who's become not just a colleague here, but very much a friend. Barbara Milbauer is here. Linda Small, Deanna Blevins at the Fitness Center. I know she probably has a love-hate relationship with me because she knows I'm going to talk about bikes. Where are the bikes? When are we going to get this taken care of? But she has just been a tremendous person. Gary Lichtman. Father Jerry Kavanaugh, what can you say about him? He's still teaching here. Peggy Pattison, yes. I see Father Kavanaugh, it seems, wherever I go these days. If I go to the U of D theater company, there he's going to be. No matter where I go, Father Kavanaugh is still there. Marie Ward, we reconnected after all these years. Dennis Carlesso. Olivia Martin, who's here. Arnold D'Ambrosio is here. Jason Roach, I don't know if he's here. Claudia. I was so happy to see Claudia from the food service here because all the meetings I've been to, she always had this welcoming smile, and so I just really am glad and thankful that people like Claudia are at this university. Father Tim Hipskin, who gets students involved in not just the school but the community. He blesses our bikes at the homecoming too. We had no flats, so connection. the first thing you learn in detective school is that there are no coincidences, you see, so that's how I subscribe to. Will Wittig, I didn't go to architecture school, but I feel that I'm one of their biggest supporters and learning from them. And of course, I want to recognize my sister Pamela, who's here with her husband Alan and her daughter Allison. My cousin Mary Lockwood, who more than anybody in the Page family has really kept us connected. And we have Tricia Gould, who came from Boston. She's already networked with the dean of the law school here. She works at Northeastern University Law School, and she stood by me, and it's been really difficult for 25 years. So, and of course, Dean Mark Denham. A few other people that I didn't know were going to be here from the Neighborhood Service Organization, just doing good throughout our city. And that's Sheila Clay, she threatens to retire. We're going to try to keep her from doing that. And Denise Figursky, that they are here today. And then Kevin Williams showed up here today. And there's many stories I could tell you about Kevin Williams. He's one of those people that you really can't supervise. You just send him in the right direction. But we worked together in LAPD, and now he has a position of leadership here. And of course, Dr. Garibaldi, that the dignity that he brings to his office and this university is so much appreciated. I think back 12 years ago when I was moving from LA, and I would tell people I moved from LA to Detroit, that I would see a shock on their face. You mean you moved from Detroit to LA? And I said, no, I'm moving from LA to Detroit. They were very much in disbelief. My, how that's changed. When I tell people now that I live in downtown Detroit, they typically say, that is so cool. We can't wait to downside. We want to move there too. Some of my LAPD colleagues have said, our kids want to move to Detroit. They said, that's where all the cool people, that's where all the artists are. So things can change really, 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 really quickly. So times have changed, but really what hasn't changed, I believe, is our school's commitment since 1887 to its namesake city of Detroit and to its Jesuit and Mercy values and spirit. So I thank you very, very much. I'm very appreciative of this honor, and I'll try to give back. Thank you.